Welcome to the Only in Movies podcast. I'm your host, Onari, coming to you from Austin, Texas.
And I'm your host, Amato, coming to you from Buffalo, New York. And in this podcast, we break down scenes and discuss things that happen only in movies. Welcome back, everybody. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing great out there in the world. Thank you to all our listeners for continuing to listen.
We're chugging along over here. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Only in Movies Pod to find out what movie we'll be covering on our upcoming episodes. Watch ahead with us and send us your suggestions for scenes that should make our Only in Movies list and for a chance for your suggestions to also make it on the show.
All right, this week's movie, Searchin', directed by Anis Shajante, starring John Cho, Sarah Son, Michelle La, and Deborah Messing. Here's a quick description. David Kim becomes desperate when his 16-year-old daughter Margot disappears and an immediate police investigation leads nowhere. He soon decides to search the one place that no one else has, Margot's laptop. Hoping to trace her digital footprints, David contacts her friends and looks at photos and videos for any possible clues to her whereabouts. All right. So this was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. I'm a thriller fan. I like not knowing what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and all that stuff. And I think this movie gave me a lot of that.
So when I heard about this movie, it wasn't really like that popular. It was more like a critically acclaimed movie versus a big blockbuster, you know?
It made a good amount of money. It made it had a limited opening weekend.
Yeah, that's why it played a role, you know, the limited
but it made
release.
$75 million worldwide.
With a small budget, I would presume.
Yeah, I could have made that movie in my basement. not the movie part, but you get what I'm saying. It doesn't seem like they needed a ton of money. They didn't need a lot of actors and things like that. We'll talk about that and what we mean by that as we go.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good movie, and we'll talk more about that. So the Only in Movies list. Denari and I both watch a movie and choose scenes that make the Only in Movies list, where we think this could have only happened in a movie. And then we also have what we call our Come On Fam scenes. And those are just little smaller tidbits and things that happen throughout the movie that we're just like, come on, fam. How could you even pull that one off? So Denari, what's your first scene for the Only in Movies list?
So the first scene that made the list for me was actually pretty deep into the movie. And that was the brother setup scene.
We have overlap.
So this is when, you know, John Cho, who's playing David Kim, the dad of Margot, played by Michelle La, he finds some evidence, or at least what seems to be evidence, pointing to something nefarious going on between his daughter Margot and the brother Peter, played by Joseph Lee. So he goes to the brother's house and he kind of stages this little meeting, or like just a visit to kind of chat about what's going on. But he sets up these surveillance cameras, like really quick portable surveillance cameras in different places of the house, so he can record a conversation. And he has his own laptop on the car outside in the garage, transmitting and recording everything. So this is his attempt at trying to kind of get a confession or some incriminating evidence from the brother.
Yep.
So what made the list for me was that, so David has been talking to his brother Peter the whole time about Margot being missing and kind of bouncing ideas off of him. And I'm thinking, this person has been helping you this whole time. You skipped to he possibly killed your daughter or did something to harm your daughter before thinking that they were just hiding something else. For example, like, you know, we find out that it's actually weed that he was hiding.
The wording. There was a lot of plot points in this movie that pointed you in a certain direction. So there were many red herrings, as the term. There were many red herrings that forcibly pointed you in that direction. So as you read that, you're like, if I read that conversation with one of my daughters, I would definitely be like, I would like to investigate this further. My issue with that is, okay, you're my brother. You're selling my daughter weed. The second she goes missing, you should be like, hey, listen, I know you're going to be mad at me. I know this. I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm selling her weed. Just, you know, it's good to know. You know, I could only be so mad at you.
By the way. Yeah, so that was my next point in that. David jumped to something bad or jumped to the idea that his brother was doing something bad to his daughter. And he got so angered that you couldn't really think that it was anything but, like, you know, severely bad. It wasn't that, he was helping her cut classes or something. The way he reacted and almost, with physical violence made you think that he thought his brother either, maybe raped her or kidnapped her or killed her. And like I said, I will admit the brother was an idiot and not disclosing the information about the weed.
Right.
Or the smoking with her, especially after the money evidence was revealed, because that would potentially implicate drugs or some kind of other activity. I feel like until it became really serious, maybe the brother was keeping the promise to the daughter of not revealing that information to the dad. But once it was revealed that it was serious, she was definitely missing. They found this money evidence, and you discussed this with.
But even further than that, they found her car. They found blood.
Yeah, at any one of those points, it was time to fess up, bro.
Way past let's keep secrets.
Right. At this point, you should be saying like everything that I know about my interaction with her in the last week or so, I smoked her up on the day. First of all, on the day she went missing, apparently they hung out. That's what I gathered, right? May 1st.
Right, yeah. So I have, for the note, so again, that scene took me, they had me. I won't lie. They had me. I was like, the brother, after all of this, it was the brother. I have WTF, sicko R. Kelly shit. There was no gray area in the convo. None. No gray area. Obviously, there was gray area.
In the text convo?
Yeah. There was tons of gray area, obviously. But in my mind, there was no gray area.
Yeah. This was my second time watching this movie. And the first time I watched it, it got me for a second, but then immediately, I was like, there's no way that they can, it was too kind of like direct. You know what I mean?
But why didn't the brother also consider the chat history on the computer? Eventually, this is going to come to light. I might as well just tell the truth now.
So that is a good point. But if you also think about the fact that the dad, David, had been going through everything except the chat, the text conversations, yes. That made no sense.
Yes.
There were a couple of things like that that didn't really line up there. One, because they were kind of proving how meticulous he was in documenting and searching everything. And then at the same time, there were like glaring omissions or things that didn't line up. And I also think in that whole interaction, when the brother was finally kind of caught, he was trying to get him to fess up and say what was going on. The brother was way too slow in coughing up that information.
Yes. He put his hands on him. Yes.
This is not the time to do a slow reveal. You should be immediately say, I was smoking with her.
For a second. Done. For a millisecond, if you think that it was inappropriate with me and my niece, I just want to get that out the way that was not the case. What I did was wrong, but it wasn't that kind of wrong.
I wouldn't even lead with what we did. I would lead with what we didn't do. So I would be like, we didn't do anything wrong. I don't want you getting any ideas. We just smoke weed.
Right.
Boom. That took 4 or 5 seconds. Right. He was like, let's sit down and talk about this. You're making this sound way worse than it was, all right, at that point.
Right. They dragged it.
He was like, and saying it's not what you think. That is not ever a good series of words when you're trying to explain anything, right. All right? Because you don't know what I'm thinking. Right. You might not know exactly what I'm thinking. So saying it's not what you think makes me think it is what I think.
Maybe I thought you were selling her weed, and it really, really upset me.
Yeah. In terms of calming a paranoid person down, the brother did not do a good job at doing that quickly.
No, absolutely.
But yeah.
So my first scene was, and to me, first off, I don't think the scene had a ton of it had a lot of little omissions, but I don't think it had a ton of glaring omissions or glaring scenes to make the list. But my first scene was his daughter calls him to say she's going on an all-nighter. First of all, who does all-nighters in high school?
AP could be kids calls that.
I have 2 daughters at high school, one in multiple AP classes. If she called me to tell me she was doing an all-nighter, okay, fine. With a family I've never met before,
I guess we have to define what an all-nighter is, because
right, that was my thing too. So if you tell me you're going to do an all-nighter, you must be spending the night at these people's
that is
house.
The definition, my definition at least, of all-nighter.
You're not coming back at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very poor parenting.
That was actually one of my come on fam scenes.
But he didn't even say, what is the name of the family?
What's their house? Can I get a number so I can call someone in case?
What block do they live on?
Nothing.
Black, white, Asian, Spanish. Can I get something? Gonzalez?
What's the zip code?
Yeah, are you even in this town?
I was about to say, are you still in the States?
So, and then I guess I took for granted that they had everybody in their high school just had a car and could just get back and forth wherever they wanted, because it didn't, I guess, at the very first say she had a car. And then when it dawned on me, like, I was like, how does this chick get all these places? And it's because she had a car.
Yes.
I took that for granted, and I'm just like, I don't know. Even if my daughter has a car, I'm still gonna need to know where she's at, what time she's coming back, what time should I expect her.
Yeah, so I know at the very least she can get home, so I don't have to go pick her up, and that's okay. That's fine. But like I said, this is one of my come on fams, because what parent goes to bed without confirming that their high school age kid got home? Whether it was 11, 12 a.m., 1 a.m., I would need to know that you made it home before I go to sleep. In high school, of
And
course.
sometimes having them coming home on their own is worse than you having to go pick them up. Because
Yeah.
if you have to go pick them up, you know every step of the way where they are. When they have to come home on their own, you're like, somebody could have gotten into an accident. They could have been a drunk driver.
You're
They're
just
5
waiting.
minutes late, right? And it's a very stressful situation. He was just like, all right, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, he was
I'm
able to go to
speaking for
sleep.
someone who has an actual, or has 2 teenage age kids. I would have been stressed.
He went to bed and then woke up and was still completely fine, thinking that his daughter went to school and having not heard from her the whole night or confirming that she got home.
Yes,
I guess he saw their
did.
books on the counter at some point, and that showed that she did get home eventually, but not in what state. You know, she got home. Was she sober? Was she drunk? Was she hurt? Was she crying? Was she happy? So you know that at some point she made it home, and now she's no longer home again. So like, what this you're not going to see your daughter for almost 14 hours on a school night. You know, overnight, and then back to school, and then back until she comes back from school the next day.
And I think that, you know, what I don't think, the theme of the movie was that he was somewhat of a negligent dad. Not negligent, but he was detached from his children.
I wouldn't even say
from
detached.
his child.
He was not as involved, or maybe, I guess the word is negligent.
I wouldn't say negligent, because to me, negligent is they're not being fed. They're not. He had negligent moments. He wasn't a negligent parent per se. To me, he's not. You know, she was fed. She was taken care of.
Uninvolved?
Yes, uninvolved.
I would say
I would
maybe
go
uninvolved.
He was uninvolved parent. And I think that was a theme through this movie. But this for that scene was just like extreme for me. Like, again, as a father, like, that was a lot. You're just not even gonna double check, care. That was a lot for me.
Yeah, definitely. And then as part of the whole uninvolved theme, I was completely surprised to not know that he didn't know any of his daughter's friends, a single one. Not even.
That's literally what I have in that line too. You don't know any friends. Again, I have teenage daughters. I can tell you all the junior or high school now drama for the past 6 to 8 months, because I hear about it all the time. So to not know any of my kids' friends would be like nuts to me.
Yeah, I'm you know, damn near 30, and my mother knows some of my friends from college. All right. So
absolutely.
So for them to not know anything about a high school age student or a child, it's kind of really surprising. You have to be like a really uninvolved parent to do that. Right. And the theme was, you know, he was just kind of like emotionally distraught after his wife's passing. But like the brother pointed out later on in the movie, this is when you should actually be becoming more involved. And instead, he withdrew.
100%. Because if you're as an adult hurt, she probably is too.
Right. Even more so, because you could probably process this a little bit better as an adult. You would think, you know, not 100%, but you would assume you have more maturity to process this. And the person that doesn't is your child, which you should then be a little bit more involved in the situation. So all around, it was magnified for the movie's sake.
Right. Of course.
Through news stories and through, you know, just knowing the culture that we are in, this is not too far-fetched from scenarios that we hear where like the parents had no idea that the kids were doing XYZ, you know?
Like, I didn't write it down, but the $100 a week for lessons that she stopped 6 months ago, I feel like I would have had to know that at some point.
Like, so you're telling me for 6 months you haven't spoken to an instructor at all? Not even to see how she's doing?
There's not a recital.
Is my money going to something worthwhile? Like,
there's no shows or...
Screw a show. Is she getting better? Am I paying for something that is actually taking effect? Because if it's not, then what's the point?
Can I have a progress report of some sort?
Right. A receipt, you know, something. Do you do your taxes? You know, it's like...
And speaking of him not knowing her friends, I thought it was also glaring that while his child was missing, he had no friends or family at his house.
That is a good point. I didn't notice that.
I guess that was really telling. He was alone. Even his brother really wasn't at his house a lot, standing behind him like you see in the movies, and he was on his own. He didn't have there was no his mom or dad, or obviously that was his only sibling.
Yeah, it seemed like he kind of took it all on his shoulders. The death, he kind of took, instead of
But he had
reaching out
no
for people.
friends at all.
Like I said, it seemed like he took it. He was trying to appear strong, and I think part of that is being reserved, because even the brother, when he tried to kind of ask about it, like, "Hey, have you guys yada yada?" He became a little bit defensive. You saw he was like, "Nah, we're good.
Right.
Don't ask questions." So I think that
Right.
was just him putting up a front and kind of blocking everyone out so that they can't see his hurt in reality, which is not a great coping mechanism, but.
Right. I feel like in that situation, I would have to be throwing people out of my house. I need y'all to go.
Yes.
I need to be alone.
And I can't judge him for that. Every family is different,
Yes.
My family,
Yeah.
yes, is very overbearing when it comes to situations, but others aren't.
Right.
So I don't fault him for that piece, but it just did seem that a lot of the occurrences were precipitated by his kind of wall building between.
Yeah. At one point, I even wrote that dad don't know shit.
Yeah. Yes, he did not know. The things that he knew could be counted in one hand.
Right.
She went to school. She was a girl, and he was a skateboard.
He knew where her computer was.
Yes. My next scene was, again, towards the end of the movie, during the memorial, where he's doing this kind of live streaming of it.
Which I thought was sick.
I didn't really understand why he went from kind of seeing how his daughter was only like alive pretty much online and not really knowing much about that to wanting to broadcast the memorial.
Is that really a service?
I'm sure it is, man. I mean, you could broadcast that. I didn't doubt that.
To me,
for
that's
a
up there
second.
with putting my face on a shirt. Don't do either of those things after I pass. Don't put my face on a shirt. Don't live stream my funeral if they couldn't make it. Fuck them.
I could definitely see that being a service. And I think while it seemed odd that he would go for it, I think at the same time, the reason why he might was because maybe in his mind, the people that actually were friends with her were online.
Right. I can see that. Don't do it for me.
Yeah, I'm all good on that. Hard pass. But yeah, so during that memorial scene, the fact that now he found out basically that the detective was kind of in on it and she was actually orchestrating the cover up. He calls the detective's department, not through her, and we're kind of then seeing the live stream. He shows up and you see him walking down the hall of the church, looking left and right at the pews. And I'm like, why would they ever allow him to confront her first? The only reason I could possibly think is if he just showed up before the cops got there.
I thought he was going to wild out. I thought he was going to start screaming and cursing.
Yeah.
And I thought something was... That scene was kind of anticlimactic for me.
So because of that is precisely my question. Why would they ever allow the victim, or I guess the victim's family, to show up first or be there with the
and
person?
Approach before police can approach. Agreed.
Yeah. And then so there's that part, right? And then it wasn't, at least to me, it didn't appear like it was an actual case of him getting there first or whatever. It was almost like they were waiting for him to do it, because then they started coming in through the doors and they weren't rushing in by any means. They were just calmly walking in, which was another thing. Why wouldn't they have guns drawn? She's clearly armed and because she's a detective.
Right,
and
absolutely.
Clearly dangerous if they're accusing her of
but you're also, I guess it's you work kind of in the middle of a funeral. I understand you're approaching the person who killed the person whose funeral it is. But
right.
Maybe.
At this point, you know that it's not a funeral. I mean, I guess you don't know that it's not a funeral.
No, you don't know that point yet. Nope, not at that point.
You're right. You don't know that it's not a funeral, but you do know that you have a potentially armed and dangerous person in here. So their approach of calmly walking over...
to kill. Or with a propensity to do harm of some sort.
So a couple of things came to my mind. Like, why wouldn't they approach her with their guns drawn, or at the very least unholstered? They just had their hands on their guns as if they were just doing a traffic stop or something. No, you are attention a potential murderer,
right.
Here. And then two, why would they not clear out the church as well? They cleared out like a couple of people.
To me, that
around.
was more the crazier thing. It was just like, what if she just jumped up and started shooting?
Right, like they didn't explain to anyone. They're like, for all they know, like the whole thing was still going on, and they're just like, excuse me, gotta go through. Excuse me, gotta get by.
Pardon me, right?
Yeah, pardon me. Excuse me. Pardon me. No, you should
They took
be
some holy water and did the cross before when they first walked in.
father.
They
Father,
did
thank
the
you.
prayer as they walked into the pew before they grabbed her.
They knelt.
They took
Yeah.
their time. Yeah.
I was just like, this is a very odd, apprehension that they just did of this suspect, especially because when she got up, she didn't exactly, waltz over there immediately.
It looked like they could be contentious.
Right. There was like
Yeah.
a little bit tense moment where she just stood up slowly, and I was waiting for something to happen the first time I watched it. But yeah, so that's my scene for that one.
So this is my last scene because we had some overlap with the brother scene, with the Peter scene. And this might just be because I'm a punk. But I thought when he left his house with 12% battery to go where he had no idea he was going.
You saw that too, right?
With no, I don't know. I would have at least charged to like 50% before I left, 20 minutes.
Or send the detective my location to drop a pin, something.
That might have cost my child their life. I would hope not, but I would hope it would be more helpful in the situation because I have a more means to communicate outside. So I thought that was just like, I'm sure he didn't have a car charger. He drove all the way there.
Yeah, he was a little bit reckless there.
Stuff.
I'm here, but I can't tell anyone. Yeah.
Yes. And then what if he got there, his phone died, and there's actually a serial killer in the woods who chops his head off, and now nobody knows what happens.
Yeah, not very good planning on his part for all the yelling that he did.
Yeah, and he seemed like a very meticulous type of guy who made sure about a lot of little things. I was like, leave it with 12% is just...
Yeah. So again, with the movie kind of painting this picture of him going through all these steps to gather this information, we see that the daughter apparently had no password on her laptop, and yet she had every other account locked down like Fort Knox. They were doing like private account, private access, access denied. But then he opens her laptop and boom, no password, right to the desktop.
So related to that, I thought it was crazy that he opens Facebook and it doesn't auto log in. And he opens Gmail and it doesn't auto log in. At least Facebook. Any computer, almost every computer you lose Facebook on regularly, you open Facebook and it's logging you in. Especially if you don't have
design.
Right, by design, 100%. 100%. So I thought that was a little bit weird, especially as you pointed out, he didn't even need a password to get into the laptop. So I would think a lot of, especially nowadays, a lot of those websites are set to save password, auto login. It's just the convenience of things. So I noticed that too.
You might manually log out, but if she didn't, then...
Who uses Facebook that's logged in and out of Facebook every day? On the computer they use it from.
Yeah, so that was definitely a come on fans for me. I'm like,
yeah.
So she has everything locked down but her actual laptop. I was like, okay. So that was my last come on fam scene that I had.
So one of my funny things I want to discuss was they held on to Windows XP for a long time. And I understand that, like, I guess it was the family computer, and they were using AOL. So I first off, this movie was about an hour and 30 minutes.
42 minutes.
About 42 minutes. It took me probably a little more than 2 hours because I did a lot of pausing to read things in the background. I figured
did? Nice.
I figured everything mattered, so I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So like looking at the dates on when she was in kindergarten, when the mom first got sick, I tried to capture all of that as I was going. So first they were using AOL in 2008. Were people still using AOL in 2008? I was out of college by then. I know I wasn't, but were people still... I didn't think...
People were still using... So you say general people. Yes, people were using AOL in 2008. Were,
the masses?
Yeah, the masses, and were like our generation using... I don't think so. But AOL was still, even now there are people still using AOL.
Okay.
Yeah, my other funny stuff that I noticed was when we first hear the detective calling David, her voice and her tone were not very reassuring. So that was like my first flag. She was like emotionless and short. I was like, is this a murderer that just called him? Like, what's going on right here?
I said, I have written down, do not tell info on phone to cop, super suspect. Like she sounded, I thought, honestly, when she called, I thought she wasn't even really a cop. I was like, whoever called, that's not the cop, that's the killer. They're trying to get you.
That was my reaction on first watch of this movie as well. But then they kind of soften you up as you see her like working really hard to kind of find her. But that very first conversation, I was like, geez, she was kind of rough there. Yeah.
So, and there was a couple of scenes that made me be like, was it her? I won't tell you that I knew it was her or it was her and her son or that they did it. But there were a couple of scenes that made me like, why? This is weird. What's she doing wrong? I guess my first thing was, and related to that is, He waited a long time to call the police.
I thought that as well, but the piece that was a little bit giving him like some benefit of the doubt is that, yeah. So at that point, he just wrote it off. You know, he was gonna go off on her. You saw that long like message that he wrote. So he kind of just wrote it off as her being a bad kid at that point, and basically lying about that. So it all fit. The money, the trip, the fact that they were in the mountains, they had no reception. I'll give him that, you know, until I hear from the kid, then maybe I don't freak out fully.
Well, I do actually have what I wrote. When would I call the police? And I said I'm calling the police as soon as I speak to Isaac. And then I saw it. So he spoke to Isaac, and he confirmed that they weren't camping, or that she wasn't camping. He called the police. But if you go to that scene too, which can allude to one of the later scenes, his brother's not even really concerned.
No, and like he said, he's like, I kind of did something similar when I was a kid, you know.
He's like, and that's why later in the movie you're like, oh, well, maybe it was him. He wasn't even concerned when she went missing.
Yeah, it did a good job of setting those things up there. And then I also thought, these fucking, what kind of spoiled ass kids can just run away from 24 hours and not catch the ultimate health storm from their parents? Right. He's like, yeah, I was gone for 24 hours. And he's like, maybe she's gone for 24 hours. I'm like, no, what? I would never. That would never enter my mind or not even my cranium. It's not even
I would come home 10 minutes late and I would know my mom knew because the door would be ajar.
Meaning
and
she was waiting for you.
Yeah, 100%. She was stalking, and I would open the door. I would prepare myself. I was like, damn, she knows. Like 5 minutes. So staying out. I was never the kid who was gonna stay out all night because my mom was crazy. So
never. All right. Like I said, I can't even tell you that I thought about it. All right.
Right. I definitely thought about it, but I didn't do it. It was a quick ass thought. It was fleeting.
Yeah, but it might have come in and be like, "Are you crazy?" Yeah.
Right. All right. You like your teeth, right?
Yes. Okay. So funny about that part, related to that, when Detective Vic, she's talking to David, and I guess they're kind of discussing the fact that she might have run away, and she goes, "You don't always know your kid, and that is never your fault." I was like, you never your fault? It's sometimes your fault. All right. So I don't know that it's never your fault, the way she said it.
Well, in that scene too, he goes, I need to know more about her. I was like, who you gonna ask? The neighbors? Like, like what's going on?
You should probably ask her.
You should know your child, at least a little. Again, I'm not the super father, but come on now.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you should know every single detail,
but you should know a detail.
Yeah, something.
At least one.
When he goes on the internet and he's looking at Facebook, etc., and they're not friends, that I didn't find to be glaring. That's probably a common occurrence nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
the kids don't want their parents on their Facebook pages or other social media pages, and two, you might not want your son on your Facebook page. You know, either way,
kids don't even want Facebook pages nowadays. So.
And then, do you have any other funny notes?
So one of the things I had was that Derek dude, he was, first off, I hate people who pose with guns and weed. He posed with guns and weed. Okay, fine, that's great. Yeah. Then he posted that he was her pimp. She's with me. Money was her pimp during an ongoing murder, kidnapping. You don't know what investigation.
So I thought that was actually pretty realistic because, and I'll get into this in our wrap up, but they did, I think, capture a lot of
I agree
the
with
bad
realistic
things of the internet with the search there.
Like when that girl Abigail was like, she went
my
from
best friend,
right? She went from I wanted to study, I wanted to get. What school did she wanted to get to?
I wanted to get into Berkeley, I think it was.
Yeah, she wanted to get into Berkeley. She went from that to she was my best friend. But even that, I understand that was wrong, but that doesn't implicate you in a murder.
Yeah.
Posting she's with me, money was her pimp, implicates you in a murder. Even if you didn't have nothing to do with it. And then when the dad actually paid for the phone lookup, I was like, that scene had to be paid for by the phone lookup company. Because everybody in the world has actually considered that for like 3 minutes, but nobody's actually paid for it before.
I've searched for a number of phones and hitting that
exact same website.
And I've been like, oh, well, there goes the search. It's over.
This means nothing to me. So I was like, oh, that was an advertisement. And then when Derek got his jaw broke, I was like, I'm okay with that. He hit him first.
Yeah, when I saw the video, wasn't that self-defense? I mean, he's still a
punched
minor,
David first.
but
right.
And he was the aggressor. I think he held in his collar first or something. So at that point, I think he might have been justified in retaliating or whatever. But yeah, that kid had it coming.
Yeah, he deserved
There's no other way to
shit.
put that.
He deserved to be stomped out.
And then my last funny thought that I had is, so the whole premise of the movie is that essentially she turned a potential manslaughter case for her son into a definite homicide case.
Exactly. Yo, that is one of my biggest things too. I thought that's really important. That yes, it could have been at the end. It would have just been. It could have been. You could have played it off as an accident. It could have been an accident. It could have been a really bad accident, and she was alive. So you would have been in trouble. But she turned it into murder one.
Yes, she escalated the situation heavily.
Possible manslaughter to murder one.
Yes. As a detective, you would think these thoughts are going through her head.
But you know what? I also, you think you're smarter than people. So you think you're going to get away with it. A lot of times I think, wow, you had to know that was good. In real life, you had to know that this was not going to be a successful journey that you were about to embark on. But a lot of people just see the goal and not the actual journey to that goal. And boop, right into a brick wall. I read there's like a whole psychological study that criminals can only see the benefit of what they're doing. They don't actually see, a lot of them don't see far enough to see the consequence. So they see the immediate benefit and gratification, but not the consequence.
She thought she could outsmart them, like you said.
She thought she was smarter than everybody.
And she almost got there, to be fair. She almost did it. It wasn't for those pesky kids and the dog.
Right. Right. If dude didn't really put his effort in to find his child, yeah, he wouldn't have.
So yeah, let's get into overall review then of the movie. You want to start us off?
I liked it. I thought this was a really good movie, a good thriller. I thought it was put together well. And to me, this is the first movie I've ever watched that was put together from this kind of point of view. I don't know if there's any others or any similar movies that have this point of view. I thought it was very unique, and I thought it did well as a storytelling mechanism. Definitely hard to figure out who did it. A lot of red herrings, a lot of misdirections. A lot of different, you think you're like, I got it. You knew it was fish and chips, and obviously at the end, it turned out that fish and chips was her son. You knew fish and chips was involved, but then she went to interview fish and chip. The cop went to interview fish and chips, and fish and chips was completely legit. So you're like, oh well, I gotta cross that off my list. But there was a lot of redirections. I enjoy that. I like to not know just the answer immediately, and I like to not be able to just guess.
Yeah, seeing Fish and Chips' photo in the memorial site, that was like a big moment when I first watched the movie.
Yeah, that kicked my butt. I was like, oh, okay.
Well.
Okay. And I also thought it was interesting that the whole fake license thing. I was like, that just seems like a really not a left undone thread, which it turned out was the cop pretended she got a fake license to say she ran away. But as the dad, I would have been like, as the dad, I was like, that was a little bit tricky. I thought it ended well. I would advise people to go see it. I would think I think it's a pretty good thriller.
So I really enjoyed this movie as well. Like I said, I had been looking forward to watching this movie. I was trying to see it at the theaters, and I couldn't find a showtime that worked out because it was so limited. And I finally saw it streaming. I liked that the pacing was very quick, and the movie was relatively short, an hour and 42. That's like, as we know from this podcast, that's not easy to find nowadays.
Right. Yeah.
Especially with a good story. So it'll be short, but it'll be bad a lot of the times. And I like that, like you said, most of it took place on simulated digital devices. I haven't seen a whole movie do that. I've seen segments done, where they capture like the text messaging or maybe a video call. But to have the entire movie play out in a timeline from the beginning of the daughter growing up and all that was pretty cool. And I enjoyed it partly because of my IT background and seeing all these things the devices use and the evolution of them, and also because it did also introduce a bit of nostalgia, back in the XP days.
And you saw the evolution, like the adding YouTube and joining Facebook and
cat videos. And what is YouTube and all that? Yeah. So that was definitely a little nostalgic feel, and I
could see how somebody would not like this though. It's not
traditional.
It was movie. Yeah, I could see how that would throw someone.
It's not something that you would have experienced often. So as person that likes traditional movies, maybe this might not have been your thing. If you wanted more traditional acting and settings, etc., thought they did a great job at capturing the way that kids use the internet these days. The trolling, the hashtag generation, where everything becomes a trending topic, viral news stories, how it gets picked up. You get the vitriol from the newscasters. You get the people all weighing in and people using it for their own personal
the dad
gain.
being accused of the murder.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, that's all part of these, the internet age that we're living in now. And I thought that they did a great job at highlighting all of that, the positives and the negatives. Some of the positives is like they showed like the Reddit pages, and I say positive with a grain of salt because we've also seen how the internet detectives can help sometimes, and then it also becomes a problem as well when they take matters into their own hands, or they do like this doxing where they put all the information out for people,
or like when you put cameras in your brother's house to question him about weed.
Yeah. So you can get carried away. I didn't like that they made the brother be a little bit, I would say, dumb or absent-minded.
I felt like he was just nonchalant about the whole, she's gone.
Yeah, he was a little bit too blasé as a character. Like, that's your niece. You wouldn't really be more emotionally involved, or have the thought to think, yeah, I don't want to ruin her memory if she is deceased or missing, etc. But that's a pretty big thing to omit from an investigation, especially like as I mentioned earlier, when money's involved, when you're trying to get every single thread and you're talking to the brother about finding every single thread. And then I also thought that some things were a little too convenient. You mentioned like the redirection. They were definitely trying to steer us into certain places. But some things were, like I said, were wrapped up a little too conveniently. Like the detective being able to just say she cleared those 2 zones. Nobody checked her on that. Like, so she was running everything.
Well, and that's right. There was a lot of little things that if there was just a little bit of oversight, she probably wouldn't have been able to get that far with.
Yeah, I get that she was, volunteered and she was really hands-on with the investigation, but she is not the entire police department. At least, I don't know the inner workings of these investigations, but I would assume there's a little oversight, and especially with something that has this much traction on the media, for her to say, yeah, we checked these 2 areas. Wouldn't someone look at each other like, no, we didn't?
Well, I guess they looked at like, yo, you must have, and I must have. You must have did that area, right? Yeah.
Right. I didn't do that. Did you do that? No, she did that. I guess she did that. Who's on first? But yeah, so that was a piece that I thought, I don't think it ruined the movie, but it did try to just move things along. Like you said, as a plot device, but it did play out a little too easily, along with a couple of other things that we pointed out. Overall, though, I think it was a great movie. I've recommended this movie to everybody that will listen. I'm also a fan of John Cho.
Did you know this was he's the first Asian actor to lead a Hollywood thriller?
Oh, didn't know that.
Yes. A mainstream Hollywood thriller. I've been a fan of John Cho since Harold the Kumar. I had White Castle yesterday, actually. And people literally still associate that with Harold the Kumar completely. So yes, and he's been in a lot of really good roles in his time.
Yeah. So when I saw that he was leading this, that actually drew me to the movie as well. And then when I saw the trailer, I was like, "Ooh, this is it was fresh. The whole take was fresh."
Yes, the trailer definitely draws you in, because is the whole movie gonna be like that, or is that just certain scenes? I'm intrigued now.
Yeah, and when I started watching it to see it the way it was designed, I was like, "Oh wow, I'm here for this," and it was captivating, I would say.
Right. Yes. So follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Only in Movies Pod.
Also, let us know what movies you want us to cover in the future by responding to our Instagram stories, leaving a comment on any of our pages, and keep an eye out for the movie that we're going to be covering next week.
Join us next time for more things that happen only in movies.